Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today I figured I'd do something a little bit different. Get your cup of coffee and your favorite whip and let's get to it. By now, I'm pretty sure you must have heard of all the drama that went down earlier this year, late last year, about people sharing patterns, or not sharing, I want to say mass distributing patterns in a Discord server. And a lot of those patterns were behind a paywall. So they shared it on the Discord for everyone to see. And I believe there were hundreds of people in that Discord server. Now, I have kept my mouth quiet about that because I feel like I didn't have anything to add to the conversation. I'm not someone that buys patterns, and I'm also not someone that sells patterns. So I stayed in my lane. However, I did notice after a few videos that people, for the most part, just kind of glazed through one of the points, but they really didn't give the resources, I want to say, or they really didn't dive deep and into that one specific point. And I feel like there I can say something more than maybe my 2 cents, maybe three, you know. So I figured I would just sit down here and have a conversation over coffee and crochet. Some people have said it's just sharing, and look, whatever side you stand on, because I've seen this both ways. People are like, well, I think it's just sharing within your household, or within, to your mom or to your sister, to your best friend. It's just sharing a pattern. There is nothing bad with it. Whatever side of that issue you stand on, whether you think it's right or wrong, whether you think it's stealing or not, I think it's deeper than that. I think some creators have touched on this, and essentially it comes across as just get better at knitting or crocheting. And while I think it is true that we should all strive to get better in our technique, I also think that a lot of people don't know what they don't know. And this is not going to be an all-encompassing video because, like I said, I don't know what I don't know. I can give you some of the pointers and things that have made it to where I can crochet and I can create things without necessarily having to look at a pattern and without buying a pattern. Like I've said, I don't buy patterns, and that's not because I don't want to. It's just because I don't think I've seen anything that's behind the paywall that I can say, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I can't find this specific technique or something similar for free. I've also seen people direct you to videos where they're like, hey, look, this is like 100 free patterns, don't steal, there's 100 free patterns right here. But it's not the point. That's not the point of sharing a compilation of free patterns. The point is to actually grow your technique. So first things first, knowing the fibers and when to use them, how to use them, and what they're really there for. So there's this content creator called Nicole Rudolph, and I love her content. She is more of a history channel, and she basically just, does videos on the history of stuff and how they were bought, how they were used, and how they were made. She has a playlist called Sewing 101. And you see where I'm going with this. You learn the fibers, you learn the ins and outs of how the structure of a garment works, and you can create your own garments. She's got a series on fabric and getting to know the fibers. I think one of them is cotton, the other one's linen, wool, and there is another one that escapes me right now. But there is 4 main fibers that she goes through. And then there's also a video on synthetic fibers or synthetic fabrics that she does touch on. And those videos, I found them so helpful, and just started to see what kind of things I wanted to start using for my wearables and for my purses and for my blankets. You want to choose the right fiber for the right project. In my opinion, I don't think there's necessarily bad yarns. I think there's a purpose for yarns. For example, this yarn. This is yarn that I thrifted at Deseret Industries, and it's very, very stiff. I don't know if you can hear it. It's crunchy. But this is yarn that I want to say it's probably Red Heart Super Saver. And I didn't know this, but apparently Red Heart Super Saver, or the acrylic Red Heart Super Saver, was created as a substitute for wool. And that's why it's rougher. I didn't know that. So it's essentially made to be a wool look alike or feel alike for cheaper. I didn't know that, but it's good to know. And I can see why this would feel more like acrylic wool. It's an odd sentence, but it does feel like that. So this yarn, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it's probably a Red Heart Super Saver. So I wouldn't use it to make a wearable. Something that I wouldn't necessarily have to put against my skin. I wouldn't use it to make a blanket because heck no, this is this is like a Brillo pad. So no, I would not use it. This is what I'm working on right now. So if you can see here, this is big twist yarn. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's on the thicker side of a size 4. By the way, these are all size 4s. And this is on the thicker side. These two, the orange and the mustard color, are supposed to be the Pound of Love Lion brand. And you can see that this is thinner compared to this one. These two are the same brand. And then this is the thrifted yarn. There is some stiffness to this yarn as opposed to the middle ones. And you can feel the difference. This is soft and very like smooth. I wouldn't mind making a blanket with this. But for this side right here, I wouldn't make a blanket or a cardigan. So I think with this, I'm going to end up making a sunburst bag. I don't know, maybe not. We'll see. So knowing the fibers and what you're going to be making really does help, because there are fibers like wool, for example, that keep you warm because they absorb a lot of the moisture, but they also absorb a lot of that BO if you're sweating. So it's a give or take. So it's a give or take. Cotton and linen tend to be fresh fibers that you can use over the summer or year round, especially for like tops or very light cardigans. They also tend to be good because they have very little stretch and they tend to be tougher fibers compared to acrylic. You can use these in the kitchen because they're not going to melt like acrylic will. So there are different kinds of yarns, different kinds of fibers for different kinds of things that you're going to be making. So that's something that you have to consider. So those are kinds of things that you don't necessarily start learning until you start making and start using the things that you crochet. And you're not going to use them if you don't finish them. And you're not going to finish them and you don't make them. And you're not going to make them unless you buy yarn. Buy more yarn. No, I'm just kidding. Don't. See, this is why this isn't a finance channel. So understanding the yarn is the first step to making you a better crocheter or a better knitter. Also, understanding this little chart right here. Almost every single skein that you're going to buy has some kind of chart like this. Understanding the care instructions. If you're someone like me, you are not going to be going to the dry cleaner, then keep that in mind. You don't want to spend hours on a top or a cardigan only to ruin it on the first wash. Understanding the size, that is key. Not to say that you can't make a cardigan with a bulky or a super bulky yarn. Just understand that it's going to be super bulky and it might not fit as you might want it to because it's bulkier. So it's probably going to be more rigid as opposed to maybe a number 4 or a thinner, this isn't a thinner, or a DK yarn. Understanding the weight to yardage ratio, that is so important because these 180 yards weigh differently than, for example, this 180 yards. Let's just say this was 180 yards. And because they weigh differently, I would suggest, and I know this is stupid, but I tried it with my sister and it works. We were in the middle of the Hobby Lobby aisle and we literally got 2 skeins of yarn. We were comparing cotton. So this is important. Make this comparison, cotton to cotton. And I want to say it was the Yarn Bee cotton. And she's like, well, this is prettier. I'm like, yeah, but this is cheaper. And then we're comparing like, okay, which one has more yardage? And, you know, stuff like that. So we were just trying to make sure we were getting the most for our money. And I'm like, well, you know what? It's good and all, but you have to sit there with the yarn. She probably thought I was playing and I was just trying to make her feel silly. But this is like the way I do stuff, don't judge me. I'm not judging you, so don't judge me. All right, so literally just stand there with cotton and cotton, two skeins of different brands, and just sit there with it. Which one feels heavier? And just sit there with it. Don't judge me. I need more coffee. Anyways, or you can just simply do the math. How much does each yard weigh using these numbers? And yeah, whichever is lighter is going to be better for a garment because it'll fit nicer. I personally prefer lighter fabrics. I get very warm really quick. So that's one thing. Second thing, depending on what you're going to be using it for, if you're using it for the summer, thinner, better, lighter, better. Another thing, escaped my mind. Hang on, let me get some coffee. It's gonna have much, much better drape. The thinner the yarn, the lighter the yarn, the better it's going to drape. So that's the yarn. I know I spent a good chunk of this video talking about the yarn, but it's very important to understand it and know what you're looking for at the store because it's very easy to get sidetracked with all the pretty colors, all the pretty textures, and all the good prices, or look just only at the prices and go just for the acrylic. Believe me, I've been there. But the more you crochet and the more you start venturing out into all these different things, the more you start to appreciate and become more purposeful with your yarn stash. So moving on to choosing the right stitch. Different stitches for different folks. Like I said, it depends on your purpose. For the purpose of making this cute little bag, link down below. This is also yarn that I thrifted, and this is a zipper I got from Hobby Lobby. So this bag doesn't need a liner because the stitches are so tightly woven in. This is the spiked single crochet stitch. Things don't poke out of it. See, let me see what I have. I mostly have crochet hooks and things don't poke out of it. And if they do, it's probably because I've tossed it and turned it and it's just probably getting all scrunched up in here. But you see, it's got some structure to it even as I'm holding it. So choosing the right stitch for your project is a must. Say I would have chosen something like this, like a square motif. All of these little holes, my crochet hooks would have already fallen through. So what I would have had to make was a liner. And if I wanted to avoid making a liner, I made the right choice. Another part of understanding this label, and I'm kind of going back a little bit, but hear me out. It pertains to the stitches. You see here, every yarn has a recommended hook and needle size. For this particular yarn, the recommended hook size was a 5.5. I ended up using a 5mm hook because I knew that I wanted to have the stitches closer woven in together and I wanted my fabric to be stiffer. So generally, a smaller hook size than what's recommended will give you a stitch that is more compact and the fabric overall would be a bit more stiffer. If you're using a bigger hook size than what is recommended, it will give it a more flowy, drapey, less structured, more flimsy overall feel to the fabric, and your stitches will be further apart. Good example is this cardigan. This is a cardigan from Tony TL Yarn Crafts. I'll link it underneath. I really enjoyed working with this pattern. If you've been here before, you probably have already heard me say that I'm not really a fan of making any kind of wearables with size number 4 yarn because I think it tends to look a little boxy. It's not very drapey, it doesn't fit good, and cardigans and tops tend to be warmer for me. I ventured out to making this cardigan because this yarn, this is the color hunter green or forest green, hunter green I think it is, and it's also a Pound of Love skein. Now that yarn, kind of like this one, it's on the thinner side. So that's why I'm like, okay, I'll use it. And plus, this pattern called for a hook that was bigger, which I think it was a 6.5, full size bigger than what is recommended on the skein. And also the cardigan is not made out of just rectangles. So the sleeves, if you can see it here, oh, I took it off. Oh, it's inside out. It's inside out, my bad. All right, this is the front. If you can sort of see here, the sleeves are tapered. And the front panels have, since you're working from the bottom up, they had some decreases. I don't know if you can see it. That's why I chose to make this cardigan with that specific yarn, because not only did I have a pound of love, I also thought that it was going to make a very pretty cardigan because there's shaping on the garment and the stitches are further apart because the pattern calls for a 6.5mm hook. So I knew it was going to be drapey, it was going to be a good fit, and I knew I was going to like it. So I'm loving this. I'll link it down below. It was really simple, and quite frankly, I want to make another one. Tony knows actually how to create a beautiful garment that is shaped, and given the right properties with this yarn, you can make it work. Now, how do you get there? All of that came with a lot of research, a lot of trial and error, I'm sure, because nobody's perfect, and you get to where she is by trying, which is another thing that I think a lot of creators that covered this whole thing didn't really touch on, and that is expanding on the kinds of crochet items that you create. Meaning, don't just stick to amigurumi. It's fun, I get it. I can get in my amigurumi era and I can crochet 100 plushies if I wanted to. But I think it's important to branch out. Yes, it's fun, and yes, you do need to learn different techniques if you want to stand out, because there's only so many things that you can create by making a sphere or making a cylinder. And if you want to stand out or be unique or have, if you're a content creator and you want people to click on your videos and you want to create more things, then yeah, you need to learn more than just the single crochets and increase and decrease for toy making. And by no means am I saying that amigurumi is very basic or it's less than other crocheting, because I do understand that it takes a kind of brain to put cylinders and cones and spheres and ovals and rectangles and being able to place them together to create something. So I do understand that there are some techniques that you have to work on and perfect as you become a more skilled amigurumi or toy maker. I do think that it is important to expand and branch out and learn more stitches, learn new techniques, because, well, that is what gives you the experience. It's very different to have, I don't know, crocheted for 10 years, but all you know how to make are square motifs or blankets, and you never have tried to make a cardigan. And if you want to make blankets, that's all you want to stick with that. That's fine. What I'm trying to say is don't steal, because I have seen this point where people are like, well, how am I supposed to do this? There is no money, there is this, there's that, and there's a lot of excuses. But not knowing how to do something isn't an excuse to steal. There is knowledge out there that we just have to try to kind of put together to be able to create. And look, this part of the rant is mostly for people that are trying to expand their skills to design patterns and in the future sell patterns, or people that are wanting to learn how to make their own stuff, how to get better at crocheting without having to purchase a pattern. I guess I should have started with that disclaimer first. I do apologize. Going back to the video, we've already talked about the yarn, learning to read the label, being one with the yarn, and choosing the right stitch for the right purpose. Like I said, I'm trying to compile resources that have personally helped me become a better and more efficient crocheter. So there's this creator called Anna Kalajian, and I'm so sorry if I butcher your name. She has a how to write crochet patterns video, and it's a very complete guide. She talks about grading, because that is so important when you're making a pattern for selling. And she gives a formula on how to grade your pattern, which I found very helpful. Now, she does say, hey, this is a very basic formula. More complex and intricate designs and stitches might need a different formula. And like she said, she's not there yet, and that is totally fine, but she's sharing her knowledge. And I really like that. I really enjoy people that enjoy sharing their crochet knowledge. One thing that I think it's important is to understand that experience doesn't necessarily come with the years. It comes with practice. Like I said before, if you have 10 years of crochet, for example, and you've only ever made blankets, then that is the scope of your technique. But if you have, say, for example, 3 years and you've already made loads of cardigans, you've already made blankets, you've already made headbands, beanies, and you worked with an array of fibers: cotton, wool, acrylic, uh, mohair, blends as well, stuff, and you've incorporated other kinds of notions like zippers, working with liners, clasps, D-rings, all those kinds of things to create something. Then I don't think you should limit yourself by, hey, if you don't have 10 years of crocheting experience, you shouldn't be selling patterns or you shouldn't be doing this, because the experience is there, the knowledge is there. There is some kind of research and knowledge that you've acquired in very little time simply by working different techniques. I don't think you should be discouraged by the amount of time you've been crocheting, but I also think that we have to be kind of critical of ourselves. This book has really helped me become a more effective crocheter. Crochet Every Which Way, and it's a stitch dictionary. And for example, it gives you how to increase and decrease in some patterns. It does have some pointers, and mostly to create garments. So if you want to level up your crochet, you should be looking at things like this, depending on what you want to do. If you are into working with garments, you want to make your own tops, you want to make your own cardigans, this is probably a good book. See all the shaping? With all the shaping, I'll link it down below. Also, stitch dictionaries are really good resource books because you have everything right here. You don't necessarily have to depend on a YouTube video if you just want to sit there and listen to someone else talk. So books like these give you the resources. You need the building blocks to become a more effective maker. While I do think that there is no 100% unique pattern anymore, and there's only so many ways that you can make a cardigan, there's only so many stitches that that can float around there, because people tend to have a favorite stitch. I think a lot of it has to do with the algorithm. Things that tend to be more aesthetically pleasing or beginner friendly tend to be more pushed out by the algorithm. And those are the types of things that get on your feed. And that's why it feels like there is no uniqueness anymore. Like, for example, the bees, like they were everywhere for the longest time. And then it was the turtles. And then now I think it's the chickens or the hens. And now, or the cows. I want to say it's the cows now. It becomes to where the algorithm dictates what we as a crochet community end up making. And we have to start thinking outside of the box. We have to start thinking and digging through other kinds of stitches. And I think we're more likely to do that if we have resources outside of technology, like books, for example. If we start creating and you can take inspiration from online stuff, but I think it happens when we as creators or as crocheters or knitters start with pen and paper. And I know it's probably not going to go down well with a lot of people what I'm saying, but there is a kind of uniqueness when you sketch what you're thinking, what you want to accomplish, you sketch it, because that way you're not swayed by what's online or what is trendy. So to recap, learn your yarn, be one with the yarn, choose the right stitch, and expand on your stitch knowledge. Another resource that I want to share with you is the Yarn Council. They have guidelines for sizes, and their sizes go from extra small to, I believe, 5X. I like their chart because it gives you the proportions for everything, for the bust, the waist, the hip, the armholes, the length of the sleeve, shoulder to shoulder, and it gives you a good idea of the measurements per size. And then they have an explanation on the kinds of fits that you want and how many inches of ease or negative ease you're going to want to have on your fabric. So that's also something that you want to keep in mind when you are making clothes for yourself or if you are creating a pattern. And this is important because people choose patterns based on how the garment fits on the models. So if the model has a very fitted cardigan or a very loose cardigan, people are going to expect to make an item that fits like that. So you have to make sure that you are adding those 4 inches of positive ease into consideration when you are making these garments. And then that way, like for example, me, I'm in between sizes, I'm in between a medium and a large. This pattern says that the medium has about 4 inches of positive ease, meaning it was going to, if I was a true medium, it would have fit a bit bigger. But since I'm in between sizes, I fit just fine. So I chose the right size for the right fit that I want. Even though it's intended to have 4 inches of wiggle room, I wanted to fit perfectly with those 4 inches and not necessarily wiggle in them. Creating patterns or creating clothes for yourself isn't easy peasy lemon squeezy. And these creators, I think, should be compensated for that knowledge because they've already done the legwork that I'm showing you right now to do. So if you don't want to pay, then you have to get acquainted with these building blocks so that you can create your own. And if you don't want to learn these building blocks, or you probably don't have time or would rather just stick to what you're doing and just purchase a pattern, then that's perfectly fine. But just be aware of what actually goes behind the scenes. And this is just the learning part. The getting the experience, that's not accounting for the marketing that goes into, selling the pattern, doing tester calls, and actually dealing with all the questions and editing into the pattern, because a good designer will listen to the testers, will take those concerns into consideration, and will actually fix the pattern. It's not taking into account the time that it actually takes to grade all of these sizes because it's not easy. It's also not taking into account the time that it actually takes to sit down and write the pattern, to create the rough draft and the final. It's not taking into account the taking pictures and gathering all of the materials that are going to go into marketing and into the actual pattern. A lot of the bigger content creators, I think they have a designated studio or they pay for a photo shoot of these garments because a lot of these pictures look really nice, look really professional. That takes time, that takes money. Hiring the models or getting someone in your family to actually take the pictures or be willing to take the pictures. So all of that, these people need to be compensated. Even the free patterns are getting compensated. I don't know if you've seen, if you go into a vlog and you'll start getting all these videos and all these banners, ads and left and right. I know they might be annoying, but that is one way that the free pattern is getting monetized, through those ads. So it's also important to keep in mind, and it's also important to support those kinds of creators that have so generously put free patterns out there. My final thoughts: don't steal. It'll come back and bite you in the butt. You might think it's just $2, $3, it's just $5. Oh, no biggie, it's just a pattern. But what goes around comes around, and it tends to come back and charge interest. So just be a good person. There is joy in learning all these new techniques. There is joy in achieving something that you probably didn't think you were going to achieve. There is joy in working for a goal and getting there and then realizing, hey, this is just the first step. Maybe I can do more. I don't know, maybe that's the nerd in me and I like to learn, but there is joy in that. And look, I get it. It's probably hard to spend those $5 when in your country they translate to a loaf of bread and a carton of eggs. I get it. People want to work on the pattern now. It's a good dopamine hit to start working on something really fast and finish it really fast. I get it. But I think at least for here in the States, consumerism and we got to tone that down a little bit. There is something about things being on trend and you wanting to do them now, and maybe that it's that FOMO. I don't know, like there's got to be something where we stop, we think, hey, do I really need this? Do I really think this is cute? Is this something that is both functional and serves a purpose in my house or for me, my lifestyle? Is it something that I am actually finding joy in making, or am I just making it because everyone else is making it and it's being pushed down by the algorithm? It's part of consumerism, it's part of looking for that dopamine hit. But I think we have to be more conscious about what we're making, how we're making it, why we're making it, and when we're making it. Because you don't want to end up with a whole bunch of things that you've crocheted that you're like, well, that was pointless. Or you're like, dang, I should probably just frog it because it turns out it wasn't as pretty. It didn't fit like I wanted. I didn't, the yarn's too scratchy. I chose the wrong yarn. Or, X, Y, and Z. And I really hope I didn't step on anyone's toes. I really do want to share at least that point of view. It's like, hey, learn the building blocks. It'll make you a more effective maker, and you won't rely so much on patterns. If it is that you are not able to afford them, or if it is that you don't want to buy them. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.